What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about walking and your hips. A lot of you guys have a lot of hip issues and back pain, sometimes knee problems, and I think this will also tie into the What is Chi video and how we explain the foot positions and things like that. There's a lot of misconceptions in the fitness and functional movement world, or just conflicting ideas about how you should be walking. And especially, like, I just did a video call. I have somebody do one today that I couldn't get on the Zoom call. It was broke or something. But anyway, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about how a lot of these movement experts and their walking patterns, and they talk about foot placement and how Tai Chi is wrong to them. And all these, I'm just going to explain it's about the modality, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're doing. So I'm going to go over some anatomy things and try to bring it down to a layman level and make it useful for you guys, and also show you some tricks and things that you shouldn't be doing to fix your back and what's going on. Okay, so let's go over this basic variations of how you're supposed to walk. Okay, most of the time you'll see people, the most generalized way of walking is the heel strike, and this is so antithetical to natural movement, is striking with the heel. I don't know if you guys can see me. I'm moving this under the light, maybe I'll be better. But so what tends to happen is it's almost conspiratorial. Sitting at a 90-degree angle and walking with a heel lift is probably two of the most detrimental things to ever do to the human body. Okay, humans are not meant to sit 90 degrees. It's terrible for your anatomy. It does all kinds of things. And then, with the Western way of looking at the body, they segment things. So people also with the tight psoas and releasing your psoas. And in my methodology, what I did so well is that I always said that the psoas should never be touched and treated in isolation. Right? It should be treated as a tonic muscle, not a phasic muscle. It should be treated as as a postural thing that's into the gait cycle. So whenever I do corrective exercises, I would always use bad neighbor theory. So the psoas, I always fix people's psoas is by not touching them. Okay, and maybe I'll get into how I do that. But, in my opinion, the psoas should never be dealt with. But the problem with the psoas is that your way that your nervous system is trying to innervate the muscles, and how it's, because you basically are dealing with space through compression and pressure mitigation and variation, like how your body feels compression. So if something's happening that you're not feeling compression in the gait cycle properly, you're going to have the subconscious feeling of always falling. Like, I'm always about to fall. Coupled with the stress, coupled with sitting at 90 degrees, coupled with the heel lift, your bodies are all messed up, which is why you're seeing so many issues. And even in Tai Chi, people having trouble being able to adapt and perform movements. And people say, oh, it says the Western body is different. No, it's the Western lifestyle is different. Okay, and the way that our bones and tendons have adjusted to these unnatural positions is the issue. Okay, let's go over. Everybody knows the Tai Chi step, right? And we talk about the natural walking step. What's different between the Tai Chi step and the natural walking step, and what is the unnatural walking step, is that when you're taking a step with the normal heel strike, you swing your leg and then you teeter-totter and impact your heel. Okay? In the Tai Chi step, you should be gliding. It's almost like the Bagua mud step, except your toes are up. You shouldn't be coming up and down, right? So it's a different mechanic, very slightly. So here's a detail people would miss, because people would do the teeter-tot and slam into themselves. The other thing is where they're hitting on the foot. So in the Tai Chi walking step, and these are very small details, we're hitting forward of the edge of the heel. In the normal walking step with padded shoes, you're hitting far back on your heel. This is very unnatural. Okay? It's not something you're meant to do. It just doesn't make sense. So in that position, it's very, very bad for you. So in the walking step, you want to be hitting. Now, some therapists will say right where the bone in your shin would meet your ankle. And it would be right behind where the plantar fascia originates. My opinion, you should be in front of the attachment, is what you're aiming to land on. But that's the aim point, is in front of the bone, because of the way that the lever would move. Okay. Also because you're allowing the spring ligaments in your front of your foot to take some of that load. I don't want to be hitting the ground with bone. Okay. That causes a lot of problem when you deal with impact. So all these little impacts are constantly causing you to do weird things with your pelvis to take away the shock. You know, all kinds of weird things with your Q rails to keep you from falling forward, it's pulling you back. You start to flare your chest, take the weight off, and you have all these weird anatomical things that are happening that are making you all crooked. Okay, so that's something to be avoided, is just that natural walking step. So then you have people who say, okay, well, where you know, people say, oh, on the toe of the foot, in the front of the foot, so they want you walking like this, which is good, which is better than the heel strike, but it also presents a lot of other problems to Western people. Okay, so for general purpose of walking, you know, there's a couple of methods I would recommend. In my belief, at this point in my study, at this point, I'm coming to call is that the slower you are moving, the more externally rotated or out your feet are. So if you're standing in a normal tension posture of 45 degrees, you give you the most balance and most ability to relax. If you bring your feet in, it's very difficult to keep your balance. Well, not very, but you know what I mean. It's much more difficult. As you go forward, your feet will start to internally rotate more, so when you have your full speed running gait, you're forward. As you're increasing speed, you will also decreasing the surface area of contact. So that when you get to your fastest speed, you're only hitting this and rolling to the toe. Because you're basically just skimming the ground at full speed. When you watch a person run in slow motion, if you watch track runners, you get like a forward view and you see their feet and put it in slow motion, this is what you're going to see. If you watch my, you guys can see my foot? Yeah, okay. So, I'll make sure you guys can see my foot. Sorry about that. It's hard for me to see what I'm doing here. When your foot is completely in a dead weight position, if you notice, it wants to hang, fall in, and kind of, so it would be basically called plantar flexion, supination, eversion. Okay, but it basically means you're hanging down, turn in, flappy. Okay, so when I would hit the ground, I would hit outside, inside, forward. So this is what a natural running posture for real runners would end up doing. They hit outside, inside, forward, outside, inside, forward, with the foot straight. It's a weird floppy move, and the ankle's doing this circular thing. Okay? Knowing this, what is that really trying to teach you? That the body wants to use its springs to absorb shock and avoid contact with the ground with the heel. The faster you're going, the less contact you need. Right? Where are all the problems from running coming from? Impact. Right? Because you're not using the system properly. We're taught to think that we should be in right angles and everything should be straight and perfect. And nature's not right angles. Nature's not perfect. The body looks like it's walking on a track. But inside, they're rotating and flipping. Oh, okay? It's appearing to be straight. It's a bunch of circular hinges and lines being pulled on a circular level that make things go straight. Okay, so it's a little complicated. All right. So, what I would say for you guys, it's just beginnings that, help you get rid of, just to be able to get to a baseline of not walking in pain and being in pain or exacerbating, because anything you do with your feet is going to travel up the body. If you have a heel strike, you really would like to try to be getting forward of that heel and feel like your center of mass is level at all times. So when you're walking in your general life, you're not swinging your leg and dropping your heel. You're skimming the floor and placing your heel. So a way you can practice is to let your toe kind of drag and then kick your foot up and put the heel down. Don't just swing your foot and drop your feet, okay? It may not look like much when you're walking, it doesn't look like you're really doing that, but if you start to pay attention, you'll actually hear as people just like, dum, 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 when they're walking. There's no reason for that. So that's where a lot of your problems are coming from, this first out walking position. So what you'd like to do is at least get forward of the heel, so that, if I weigh 200 right now, about I'm between 198 and 205, somewhere between there right now, because I've been fasting. So, if I walk with my heels, you're going to hear all these flaps and all these bouncies. I wanted to skim. Okay? when we walk in karate and taekwondo, we always use the ball first and then place the heel. Ball. So it's almost like a mud step in a way. Okay? It's almost a mud step. It actually is the mud step, but straight line, and we don't do that weird position with the hip. So in general, I would prefer the heels never hit the ground. And in the first lessons in my karate is my teacher, and I do this to my students as well, I make some lessons for me, and I give somebody a dollar bill, and I ask them which one of my heels are on the ground right now. And they have to figure out which heel on the ground with the dollar bill underneath it. So the space that we use in traditional karate is a millimeter. We're literally, see right now my heels are off the ground, now they're on the ground. Off, on. You can't see it. So if I'm sparring, it may look like I'm flat-footed, but I'm actually just off the ground. Okay? That's the amount of pressure I want to be using when I'm walking. Okay? So people try to do the ball walk, and you see them walking like they're in high heels. That's not, it's better than walking heel strike, but now you're overworking your calves. You have to flare your chest. It's going to cause breathing problems. Now you get under these ribs. The back's compressed. The QL's overhyped. The serratus is messed up. You're not going to be able to get your hand over your shoulder now because your serratus is doing all this crap. So it's a lot of junk that happens. So you can do that same thing, but just bring it down a bit. And then that'll allow you to do that, soften your knees, you can get yourself to a more neutral posture. So this takes practice, okay? This takes practice to feel natural with this. Now at this point, I'm starting to, at this level of my understanding, I'm starting to add more of this circular supination, pronation, eversion, inversion thing as that dorsiflexion, plantar flexion cycle is happening. So it looks like that for me now. And I'm starting to feel like this is a better way to walk at this point in the game. Now these are very subtle things. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera. The difference between this and this is very subtle. Okay? So it's outside to inside. I'm going to exaggerate this again because what I'm trying to accomplish is to simulate the same spring system that professional runners, track and field people will be using when they're not thinking and you see them in the natural gait. So that's the thing I'm trying to accomplish. So where I don't ever hear that from me hitting the floor. Okay? Next thing is how you're sitting. The second worst thing next to the heel lift in shoes. When you put a heel lift in shoes, right, it changes your entire anatomy. Once I bring my heels up, it wants me to do this. So, the heels were great because it shows girls' butts and calves off and pushes their chest up. You know what I mean? It really came from this, Western European culture of trying to, preen like a peacock, peacocking. Okay? But this is not a natural posture to be in. Okay? So a lot of times people, I know I segued, excuse me, but I have to talk about this. A lot of people will talk about shoulders back, chest open, right? Proud chest, let me see the stuff on your shirt, all these different trainer cues. They're all wrong. We don't want to be opening the chest cavity like this and creating a lordotic curve in the spine. The thoracic spine needs a kyphotic curve, meaning it needs to be in the turtle shell, or the lumbar spine is in the other side, or the neck is doing the other thing. So you have like this little a little S curve in a way, right? So in order for our scapula to function properly, if it's a concave surface, it needs to be on a concave surface, like a convex surface or a flat surface. Otherwise, there'll be this weird space, right? The scapula is slightly shell-shaped, and it's trying to run over that surface. So in order for it to activate properly, that the surface it's running over needs to be in that position. So instead of bringing your shoulders back, which we pinch that way, I want to bring my shoulders down and rotate. And that rotation is enough to leave me with the natural kyphotic curve in my spine, but bring my shoulders back to my ear. I don't need to be here. I need to be here. The problem is most people are here. Okay? So in order to get that fixed, people say, oh, you know what, just pull your shoulders back. And they wind up like this, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So instead, just suspend your head from the string, same Tai Chi thing, drop your shoulders, turn your wrist, now you're set. And you can see I still have my like aphotic and lordotic curves that are natural to my back. And so this is very important. Going back to the, and that is connected to the feet, because again, if I was to lift my heels, a natural current is to want to compensate for that pattern by bringing my thorax cavity up and my butt out. It creates this tension loop. Okay? So when you're sitting, most people will be seen at this 90-degree position, right? Or slightly higher than 90 degrees. There's so many things that are going wrong here. I don't know if it's worth explaining all the science and things for people who are watching this. But it's just terrible, okay? This, where in nature you just sit like this? It just doesn't happen. It puts you in all these weird predicaments. And there's so many bad things about this. So if you have tight hips and back pain, you need to either be standing or sitting with the knees above 90. Okay? As high as possible. If you could sit like this, it'd be better to sit in this passive Asian squat than to sit in the 90-degree position. Okay? It just, this is natural. Now, why do people say the Asian squat is not natural? So I'll explain this. The way that the body deals with space is through compression variations, understanding where the compression is, and then gauging that, and the fluids in the body say, okay, well, this is where we are in space, right? If you're constantly hitting with this unnatural heel strike with an elevated lift, okay, it's a mess. It's a mess. So you're used to sensing the ground from the heel. That's putting your weight for the posterior chain. So what's going to happen is you're used to walking like this. Your body has a sense of its balance behind you, not where it's supposed to be. You try to sit down, what's going to happen? You want to squat, you're going to try to do this. You're going to do this. Why? Because your proprioception and canoception is saying, we are used to our weights being here. And when we go to sit down, it wants us to do this. So what do? You tighten up. You tighten up every muscle in your body. You say, oh, I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall. What am I going to do? So here's a solution to that. Most of these problems are proprioceptive. So, if you were to pick your leg up, and I practice a lot, so this isn't fair. But if I pick my leg, close my eyes, I can start to do this, okay? And now I'm actually losing my balance. I've been here for a minute. Okay, good. This is good. So now I'm losing my balance a little bit. If I take one little finger and touch the wall, my balance automatically locks in. And it doesn't matter if my eyes are closed. Once I have 2 points of contact, I can do a complete circuit. Okay? So my body's saying, oh, we know where we are in space. We're not falling. We're okay. When you have this idea of putting your understanding of balance onto the heel, your body's not okay. Your body's in a teeter-totter state. It's literally been programmed to move through space like a toddler falling in a controlled fall. So all you really need to do to correct this is put your hand on the wall and then slowly do a squat. And now what you need to do next is bring your attention, as we said in the What Is Achieved video, to bringing the balance, the mass into balance where you feel that, placing your foot to the front, not on the ball of the foot, but the end of the insertion of the plantar fascia. That's basically the whole line. I'm looking for that spot. And I want to get my balance there, and my heels aren't taking the weight, and I have a second proprioceptive point to understand my place in space. Going down here is easy. So you should start to notice, and obviously for people who've been badly patterned, you're not going to just, oh, it's first, but you will see improvement very quickly by understanding this principle. Okay? So I hope that's helpful for you guys. Okay? So we went over the foot, went over the head. The last thing I want to talk about, I don't want to get, I know a lot of you guys you don't really have the science background. It's a mix of people. So I don't want to go overboard with it. Should talk about else. So breathing, how this affects your breathing. So when you're in this incorrect walking pattern, now, as we talked about last time, you have to be able to center your foot in the ground, and I mean unconsciously. So the 3 points here, positive, negative, ground, this sense is dealing with the elasticity. So it's the inside of those 3 prongs. And understanding that pressure variation is what creates stability. It's counterintuitive to think that flux makes you feel more stable, but it's where you're feeling the flux, because that's where it belongs. And that's part of the foot saying, oh, I'm doing my job. Okay, we're in order. All the plugs are in. So when we take those plugs out and we change the way the system identifies itself in movement, we change the entire biomechanical anatomy. So if I start to hit my heel on the ground, I've changed not just the compression wave, but how my body is dealing with space and time. That creates complete changes in my anatomy, which change how I breathe and my organs function. So by doing this heel strike, it's very difficult for me to keep my chest from flaring. It's very difficult for me to stop this anterior pelvic thing. It's not easy to walk like this in a posterior pelvic tilt with your hip. It just doesn't feel right. Okay? In order to do the heel strike, you have to kind of keep your butt in a posterior an anterior tilt, moving forward. So that does things to your ribs. Okay, so if my ribs are here, and I can take my fingers and feel under my ribs, where they should be here, where I can't get my fingers under them. So even if I'm belly breathing, my ribs are still slightly internally rotated, I guess you would say, and I can't just get my fingers underneath them. Whereas if someone has a really bad rib flare, you can really just put your hands underneath. This is not good. Okay? When this happens, this closes. When the front's open, the back's closed. So now, you're no longer breathing with half of your lungs. Okay? Your QL and your erectors are firing up because it's keeping you from falling forward. Right? To keep this unnatural position, something has to take over. So all these things are happening. It's affecting everything in your body, entire system. So you start to notice, if you hold one nose and breathe in, okay, you also have to feel that, anatomically your lungs are different sizes. The left is thinner and longer, and the right is bigger and a little high. It takes like an inch or whatever. But there are different sizes, and they face different ways. So they kind of do different things almost, okay? The point is, that left side being smaller and lower, if you're already like this, it's already going to have its job. Now it's 4 times messed up. And on top of it, we have a natural want to lean in favor of the right side, because our entire right side's heavier, right? Like all the heavier organs on this side, the way that the mind plays itself in space, the whole thing is right side dominant, even if you're left-handed. I'm ambidextrous, right? So I'm a freak of nature. But I can get it. So we have that problem. So now we're going from this pattern of heel striking, chest up, all messed up like this. And now what are we going to do? We're going to go and sit down with this massive anterior pelvic tilt. And then we're going to go and sit down into this opposite posture, right? Where we're really not putting our feet in the ground. We don't feel any weight here. So now we're not really in space. So what are we going to do? We're going to try and relax, and I can finally relax. And we turn off all those other muscles that we're using walking, but what do? We start compressing our abs, and now we're like this. Okay? So the psoas is like sitting here, turning off. People say, oh, it's getting short because you're sitting too long. It's not getting short because you're sitting too long. It's the GTO reflex that tells the muscle how long it needs to be, and action's not being used, because the same as harness-hang syndrome, where if your body's in space being floated around, your quads aren't contracting, you get blood pooling and hypoxia. This is very similar, you know what I mean? But from a neuromuscular understanding, it's like if I don't feel the ground, and it's not getting input, it's not understanding where it is. So now we go from this position where it's in this like weird half on, half off, not knowing what we're doing state. And the psoas, in my opinion, is a breathing muscle as well, because it's intrinsically linked to the diaphragm. The iliopsoas you can't separate the diaphragm, the bag and your lungs that move everything up and down. So you have all these combined issues, and why people, a lot of the hip tightness, in my opinion, isn't real muscular tightness or weakness. It's your brain is just it's having a freaking panic attack constantly because it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. You need to feel your feet on the ground and feel weight on the ground, and you need to feel compression. You need to feel compression. So if I'm going to sit on my sits bones, on the ischial tuberosities, or whatever you want to call it, I need to feel those bones in the chair. I need to feel my weight stacked the same way I do in the Tai Chi posture. I need to stack on the sit bones so that I can turn off everything. I can't do that at 90 degrees because of where they're sitting. I can't get that at 90 degrees. It doesn't happen. At 90 degrees, I don't have any compression on my feet. So without compression and variation of compression, my subconscious can't understand where it is in space. So now we're in this constant fight or flight. I'm falling all over the freaking place. So you'd be better off sitting like this. Be much better off sitting like this. Now, sitting for a long period of time is not good, but I either want to be where I can feel all my spine compression on the ischial tuberosity or my sit bones, or I at least split the compression to my hands, feet, and the second contact point, right? But we're in this 90-degree position. Oh, it feels nice, but where's my weight sitting? So the same way that my feet have those pressure sensors, my butt has a pressure sensor, okay? And the butt's pressure sensor is around the sits bones, S-I-T-Z, or ischial tuberosity. So I need those bones to be completely vertically implanted into my surface so that my subconscious can understand where it is in space, so that it stops freaking out and doing weird stuff to compensate and hold me up. We need that stacking effect. And what I really should have said in the beginning, to reiterate from the Tai Chi, what is Chi video, is that we need the stacking effect. We must have a stack. Without feeling the neutral central equilibrium stack and getting on those bones, it's not good. Yeah, we can do it and we can force it from here in the 90-degree position, but it's a compensation, no matter how you look at it. No matter how you look at it, because of the way the pelvis is shaped and how the femur attaches to the pelvis and how the muscles connect to them, there is no way for you to get the perfect stack with a 90-degree position or greater than 90 degree. So anything greater than 90 degrees or greater is going to create this uneven attachment to your sitting surface. So this proprioceptive understanding of things, how the best way I can describe it in my understanding is the same way that you have a conscious mind, subconscious mind, and superconscious mind. The body works the same way. You have conscious memory, which is phasic muscle, right? I'm able to control this, right? You have subconscious, which is like your walking gait, or like, because they're conscious but semi-conscious, right? Walking gait, some of the postural muscles, things like that. And then you have your superconscious, which is completely not in your control unless you're a ninja monk. It is like heart rate and other parasympathetic, sympathetic differences, right? So that's basically where we're dealing with there. Let me just review this in my head, make sure I'm giving you something concise, because there's a lot of information. I'm trying to make it so you guys can digest it. Okay, so dealing with before I end this, I'm going to give you a couple of concepts. There's a million different exercises of how to relax your hips and how to do all this shit. Okay, I have some methods that I'm not going to share in public just yet, but the concept I'm going to give to you guys now. Let's just say you're doing, I don't know, or any kind of hip stretch, okay? Let's just say we're doing, I don't know, one of these, okay? And you're doing like, this guy right here. This isn't going to really work until you feel that you're in the ground, okay? So the more important than the stretch when you're dealing with the psoas and the flesh, these are tonic muscles, postural things that are not under your conscious control. You can't stretch them away. You're never gonna, because the more you stretch it and it's in a fight or flight, it's gonna say, you know what? No, fuck you. I'm gonna go harder, bro. No, bro. Psoas what? So it's gonna initiate more fight. Okay, and so this causes you pain and tearing. So what you need to do is try to explain to the brain, oh, this is the system you work, this is the language you work in. You work in compression variation. You work in, I need to feel where I am in space because I'm blind. Okay? That's what the body's saying. So we have to mimic in some way the subconscious understanding its pressure variations on the ground. So something simple like getting yourself on an elevated surface to compress, literally compress the femur into the acetabulum, right? And it feels like compression. And then to make sure you feel the sole of your foot in the ground. Okay? Now we do our stack. And we start to stack. And now once I stack the bone, start to notice it wants to turn off. The sole wants to turn off. Why? Because it says, hey, oh, the body's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Everybody's doing its job? Oh, and it calls the neighbors up. Guy in apartment B and apartment D are like, hey man, you guys, oh yeah, everything's cool, bro. Plumber's here, we're done. So it's like, all right, I'm gonna take a nap now. I can finally chill. If we get the entire, skeleton, the axial skeleton to work in unison to get the vertical static, central equilibrium. Now the bone structure is taking the load where it's supposed to, and the nervous system's understanding that, and it does the checklist, says, oh, bones are set, central equilibrium, we're dealing with the gravity and the magnetic field, we can all chill out. And over time, by just sitting in place and breathing and just getting your stack, these muscles will automatically go to their place. Then you start to stretch. Make sense? If you go from this position thinking it's like, oh, I'm going to stretch my biceps and my triceps and my hamstring, and you try to apply that to a tonic acting muscle such as the psoas, iliopsoas, and the diaphragm, it's going to tear you up. You're going to feel like you're not getting anywhere. And you're going to be wound up in these circles, and you're going to these idiot therapists who are going to take your money, and then it's never going to cure you because they can't. So I'm going to show you one more thing and I'll call it a day. So the way that the psoas activates in the gait cycle, it's a little different than people would think, because you would think, oh, well, this is attached there, so if this goes up, this gets pulled. And yes and no. So this is a dorsiflexion. You say dorsi, you think of a fin of a dolphin. This is plantar, planting into the ground. Dorsi is like a fish sticking out of the water, okay? So the fish fin sticking out of the water is dorsi. So when you're walking, all right, when I go and do this teeter-totter walk position, at what point do my psoas have to activate? At what point? Is it working when my toe is up, or is it working when my toe is down? And that's the trick, is that it's going to turn on as soon as you get to the plantar flexion state, because now it's in the stretched position to now activate and kick you up. So if I want to really get a good psoas stretch, I need to have dorsiflexion positive 95 degrees. So you need to have your foot, and this is high enough, but I need to get to the point, you can see it, okay. I need to get to the point where I feel the bone jammed in. So therapists are going to argue me, this is my method, and it works for me. It works for my clients, it works for me. I need compression, passive compression with dorsiflexion positive 95 degrees. I need to get those ligaments and that bone to completely set and compress so that the brain says, oh, we are at the end of the gait cycle. Okay? This is where we are in space. This gets turned off. So at that point is where you start to release things. You cannot force these internal muscles to just release. They're designed to fight you. They're designed that way. So what you need to do is trick them off. No amount of balls and this is ever going to fix it. Because, and then let's just say you do the release, if you don't fix the pattern, it's going to go back. Because again, this is not a muscle or skeletal issue. This is a neural pathway issue. It is a brain issue. It is a brain dealing with space and time compression. So, that's another thing you can do, is you may feel a real good stretch in this plantar flex like this. But if you can get into that dorsiflex position first and force it, and then go into your stretch, you'll notice that the psoas is a little looser and you start to feel your hip and your quads. So test it out. Tell me what you think. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.